our bicycle lunch and learn. Today's topic is basic maintenance and security. And we have our repeat presenter, Jamey McPherson, who is the bike ped coordinator for the City of Indianapolis Department of Public Works. And he's going to present to us this afternoon. If you will please check in the chat box, there should be a link there to Jamey's toolkit. Let me know if you don't see it, and I'll repost it. And Jamey will talk to you a little bit about it as he gets into his presentation. I am Damon Richards. I'm the Executive Director of Bike Indianapolis. Bike Indianapolis is one of the supporting organizations of the Lunch and Learn, along with Bicycle Garage Indy, the YMCA, Commuter Connect, and probably somebody I'm forgetting because I usually don't do this introduction. We're waiting now. Jamey had to do some moving around, and as soon as he pops back on screen, we will hand it over to him. Trying to think, do I have any other announcements? Upcoming events for you who are bicycling enthusiasts and ready to get outside.
Oh, there it goes.
We are going to have Bike to the Ballpark on opening day at the Indians. The Indians will still open on April 5th. They're separate from the Major League Baseball confusion that's going on. That will be a Sun King event, and you'll be able to find more about it through Sun King's website and other places. And then, of course, we will return to downtown Indianapolis in May for a Bike to Work Day on May 20th. So get ready for that. Even if you're not working back downtown, or if you never work downtown, just think about riding down that morning. Join us for breakfast and headed back home. And with that, it looks like Jamey's ready. So I'm going to quit tap dancing here and hand it over to him.
All right, great. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Could you hear the immensely squeaky wheel on the thing that I was wheeling around the office?
Only when you first moved it.
Only when I first moved it? Okay, great. And then Damon, just to remind, I'd like a reminder on time. Are we going, how long are we going total?
We have until 1 o'clock.
Okay, great.
So
if you could give me
leave some room for questions.
Yeah, perfect. If you could give me a warning at like 30 minutes, that would be great. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. So, and then I can't see how many people we have. Do we have a pretty large amount?
There are 36 people right now.
36 people. Okay, great. So,
I have a question for you though.
Go for it.
Yeah, you said till 1 o'clock. So you guys are not Mountain Standard Time then?
No, we're Eastern Time.
Okay, and when you say meetup, you're not in New Mexico?
No, I think you might be in the wrong conference.
There is 2 of them, but I'll still learn about how to take care of a bike.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm good. I'm good. I'll stay in this one then. The other one I already got out of it. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
I think one of the questions I was curious about from you all is like, if you've got the little hand function, how many folks have like changed a flat out before, for example, like changed a flat on their own? Okay, so some people for sure. Okay, great. So what I want to talk about are not on the road though. Oh, interesting. Okay, so something that you've done at home, but not in the not out on the road when you might be stranded, that kind of thing. Okay, so all right, in that case, and that's usually a good gauge for how much comfort people have kind of dealing with their bike in general. So yeah, actually quite a few. Great. So when we get to that point, I'm going to cover some basic maintenance points. We will do some basic stuff, and then I'll cover a way to check over your bike just in general. We still are definitely feeling a high demand and a big crunch for bicycle service work throughout the industry. And so being able to be prepared on the front end might help you either decide on the exact stuff that you need, or make the process of communicating what you want done more efficient, which could be good for your wallet, and definitely good for turnaround time for what you're dealing with. So I want to start with bike security. You know, even if you get very stranded on the road, you can phone a friend, but maybe they don't have a car that will be able to pick up that bike. So we can at least teach you how to leave it in a way that is ideal and secure. So there are always, we're going to go through some of the basic security options, and how you want to think about securing your bike. There are always new technologies available. There's Bluetooth stuff and Wi-Fi things. If you have questions about that, I did a little bit of research before this, and we can talk about some of those, but the basic principles still remain the same. And unless it's one of the crazy ones that is, you know, shocking you as you steal the bike, most of the security options remain the same. So, question? I think you're muted, sorry. Sorry, I can't hear you. Maybe if you can,
type your question into the chat box and we'll be able to see it that way.
Here it goes. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. We also bring up how to secure our bikes, but when we have extra stuff on them, like baskets and other things that can be removed off the bike, how to keep those intact. They could, you know, some people steal all the stuff off, not just the bike, but all the extra stuff that I buy with it.
Yeah, that's a good point, for sure. So yeah, the first thing to talk about is basically forms of, oh shoot, I forgot my favorite secondary lock. So generally, locks we kind of consider in two different types of categories. So the first category is going to be high security maintenance. And those are things that are going to take specialized equipment or an immense amount of time, or both, to get through. And kind of the gold standards of both of those are these. So we've got, oh, and my shirt's kind of dark, so it's hard to see. So the standard one, the one that kind of revolutionized bike security in general, is called a U-lock. This is my personal lock. Actually, all of these are my personal locks. This one is a Kryptonite Evolution Mini Light. So it's lightweight, it's a stronger type of steel. And most of these work in generally the same way. So it's just a shackle. You unlock it, it peels out. It's got different cuts out of it so that you can't just, you know, leverage it out. And then this one won't allow the key to fall off until it's locked. And you also cannot put this one together without the key. So I like that because it removes the possibility of accidentally locking it. When you don't have the key in hand, you have to have the key in order to put it together. Logistically, you might like something different. Like if you lend out your bike all the time and you want to let somebody lock it somewhere, but you retain the key, there are other brands that might allow you to do that. The other style of lock that I think is the highest security are these kind of fold out locks. So they too are very durable. If they're made well, these rivets should be the strongest part of the lock versus the band. Because they're kind of wiggly. They're difficult to leverage to begin with. They're also difficult to cut. And the way that they're constructed, they should be they should be high enough quality steels that you should trust their ratings. The Avis brand, these ones you can close off without the lock. So if you prefer that over the other way around, this is a good brand. In the United States, I think that Kryptonite has the best key program. So on all of these keys, well, this one's really tough to pull out, but the keys have a specific code that you should write down when you purchase the lock. That allows you, if you ever do lose the key, they do wear out, sometimes they break, that allows you to order a new one. Kryptonite is based in the United States, so if you do lose one of those, it ships out really quickly. Avis, which is like another great brand, they're out of Germany, so it can be a little while to get a new key from them. So, but they have really great products. So if you don't ever lose your keys, that one can be a really good one as well. So these ones we consider primary locks. So these are things that will reliably keep whatever is shackled to it in its place. It's likely that the thing that you're locking to might be weaker than either of these two locks. And so you can fully trust that whatever gets locked there is going to stay put. The other type of lock that we have is like a secondary lock. So a secondary lock is something that's a little bit lighter. It's not what you're relying on to keep your bike to stay put, but it'll prevent somebody from. It's annoying enough that it would prevent somebody from taking your other stuff. So that might be your wheels. If you've got an eyelet like this, you could thread it through a couple things on your bike. So like if you do have accessories or a basket, like let's say that this is just a basket, you could put it through and thread that through and still have plenty of room to get some other stuff. Some other options, like depending on, knowing that it's kind of a secondary lock option, there are some other things that you can do. Like if you have a bag that has two zippers that come together, just having a bread tie and twisting those together will prevent somebody from really quickly getting in there. There's also, like on my keys, I have a tiny little carabiner. They have some versions of these that have a locking device that you have to undo carefully. And they have some of these that actually lock. So for something like that, if you wanted it to be really secure, you could get those itty bitty luggage, what are those called? Luggage locks that have like codes in them. And that would help keep those things together. If it is a fabric, people might cut through it, so just keep that in mind. So in those cases, it might be good to bring those kinds of things in. So generally, primary security locks are going to have keyed entry, which is, that's the most secure. There are options that have codes. The codes are inherently less secure. They're easier to pick. They're just, sometimes people can just guess them as well. So if you do have a code, make sure you set it to something that's a little bit difficult. As you could imagine, like probably tons of locks start with 19 because people just put their birth date on it, or their birth year. If you're doing, so the other side of that, again, like how it might be convenient to have one that locks without the key. Some people, if they have shared bikes, they might prefer the locks with combinations so that they could drop off a bike for somebody, and then that person, as long as they have the code, would be able to unlock it. So with more and more people participating in the shared economy with bike rentals and that kind of stuff, those options are useful. And I found some of those e-locks that are Wi-Fi compatible or Bluetooth compatible. There are some really slick ones that allow you to lock and unlock bikes remotely. So I thought that was pretty neat. So these are convenient. This super long cable is fairly lightweight. I think this Bordeaux might actually be a little bit lighter in this case, but this one would allow you to like lock a bike around a tree, but there are some downsides. So I went ahead and tested this beforehand, but this is a common hand tool that bike shops have, you know, and it fits in a back pocket. And I wanted to show you guys that with minimal effort, and maybe you guys can even hear it as I'm cutting through. Live demo, so there might always be surprises, but we're pretty good at this point. With minimal effort, what was a pretty thick cable, so that's pretty decent in size. We were able to get through that guy. So obviously, if you saw somebody with one of those, like doing that and yanking a bag off, maybe you'd chase them. But you know, something like this, we are definitely not going to be able to cut through with a hand tool. It's going to take probably a power tool to get through that. So that's the two types of locks that we have. The other ones are specific to components. So there are a lot of, and I'll bring my bike around so you guys can see a little bit more closely. So a lot of the expensive components are held on with just, you know, a bolted on plate, you know, metric bolts all over the place. So if it's not something that you need to adjust typically, you can definitely replace just one of those bolts with a Torx or a safety Torx. You know, that's something that you would want to add to your own toolkit just in case. But it's rare for people to steal, well, maybe less rare now. It's generally been pretty rare that people will steal components off bikes, but if it's something that you're going to leave locked for a long time, like if you're going bike touring and you don't know you're going to be able to bring it inside with you, it can make sense to order a couple safety bolts in the appropriate size and just replace those. Wheels are probably the thing that are most commonly stolen. On my other bike, I have a replacement for the quickly skewer. So a very simple, so this is something that can come off just by hand, and I'll show you guys how to tighten and loosen that in the maintenance section when I pick up the phone. But you can replace this with just a bolt-on version. My very favorite one is made by Kryptonite. So it requires a 5mm tool to undo it, but it also has a gravity pin. So if you lock your bike upright in a way that it can't be flipped over, there's actually no way to get that wheel off without destroying something pretty aggressively. In order to undo it, you have to flip the bike completely upside down. Gravity moves the non-magnetic pin out of the way, and then you can use the 5mm wrench to undo it. So I like those a lot. They're sleek. They don't add weight to the bike. I always feel 100% secure using that. Generally, people use it on their front wheel. I have a dynamo on my bike, so I definitely would use it on my front wheel. If you don't lock your back wheel, it'd be good to get them for both. So, and with that, I do want to show you guys my favorite places to lock on the bike. So this will be just about the strategy that you want to use to lock things. Make sure I'm in frame. Yes, there we are. So I'm going to start with some places not to lock. You know, it might look really good to come through here. It feels like we've locked the wheel and the frame simultaneously. But if we were to undo the skewer, and I didn't have my fender here, this fender actually pops right out. I could just remove my front wheel and slide this lock off of the fork, and someone could lift up my bike by the rear wheel and walk away with it, and I would just be left with my front wheel. And that'd be a very sad day. Another thing is, you know, locking to a handlebar. You know, if I can move it around the handlebar like a bar puzzle, they've gotten your bike. So that's, you know, even though it might feel like you've just locked it, if you can take the lock off or put it on, then your bike is not locked. You know, same thing with locking the seat, right? So you might think locking the saddle is good, but if somebody might be able to move it around and jam it past the saddle, if they, you know, maybe they destroy your saddle a little bit, but they're able to take the rest of the bike, they're probably going to do that. So knowing that, we want to think about which parts of the bike are most expensive to replace. First and foremost, you've got the frame. Next, generally, is the rear wheel, and then the front wheel, and then the rest of the components. So we would hope to get at least the frame. So make sure that you are grabbing one tube of the frame, ideally. And that can be any of these, anything where mentally you look at it and you're like, okay, shoot, they're gonna have to cut through my frame in order to get it. That would be a great place to do it. In an urban context, when you're going from thing to thing, and you're not too worried about people cutting through stuff, my very favorite place to lock is through the rear wheel and to something sturdy. Mentally, like I think this might be something that's good for you to try out with your bike if you doubt it. But if you lock to something here, because the wheel is larger than this rear triangle, there's no way to get the rest of your bike or this wheel without, you know, cutting through the tire tube and rim to free off the lock. So if you're gonna lock to one place, I always look to lock somewhere like that. It also tends to hold the bike really securely up against something, and locking low like that keeps it from rattling around, and it's not directly on your paint. Most of these locks are rubberized, but even still, if I can reduce rub and paint off, that's what I'd like to do. So if you can do that, great. You might want to do a secondary lock. So what you can do is loop one side of a cable like this through the rear and the frame. And now I've got so much room to get something else. So let's say that I'm unable to get that rear wheel in that method. I've got so much cable left that I can come back around, and now I can lock pretty much anywhere. You know, I can lock that top of the frame to something, and that's going to be super convenient. If you do have some bags, you could get some straps. You could get some straps that are unremovable through there. You might get your helmet on one of these portions as well. I've also used my helmet as a secondary lock. There's one side of your helmet that has an adjustable strap that's open, and there will be one side that's closed. If you use the closed side, you can thread it through your front wheel and then capture the end of that or your helmet with the lock, and that'll help reduce the likelihood that somebody's going to get through it. You know, those straps are always just cloth, so somebody with a knife might cut through your helmet and then take your front wheel, but it's another step that I think people most likely would not take. So So yeah, Damon, I think since I can't see the chat, maybe you could check and see if anybody has any questions about that or any of the stuff that we've talked about so far.
I'm watching. I'll jump in if somebody, for the most part, everybody's answering the questions. And they're
Great.
wrapped by your presentation.
Okay. Great. Sweet. So that's most of the security options that I would recommend. In terms of pricing, you know, some people talk about, you know, you should spend a certain percent of your bike on a locking solution. I really think it's more based on the context that you're going to use your bike. No one's going to you know, want to buy a bike twice. You know, so like even if somehow you got like a $50 bike to get around on, if you're in an urban area, you're probably going to expect to spend like $30 to probably $110 on your primary security. And I know that's kind of a wide range. I think there are some excellent U-locks in the $40 to $60 range. Most of these fold-out ones are going to be more expensive. And then if you want something special, like my light lock, I think was maybe $70 or so. But look at the context that you're using it in. I like to think of a bike lock as freedom. The higher security that you get, the more peace of mind you have, and the less you're going to think twice about doing a certain activity. So if you do have just a cable lock to lock up, that might be fine. Maybe you only ride your bike to like a, you know, ice cream shop, or maybe you go on rides where you don't stop, you know, to go into a place. You know, if you always go to places where you can watch your bike, your eyes are probably the primary security, and then this becomes a secondary security. So that might be totally fine in your area. But yeah, I do think like the investment in a lock is something to do early, so that when you happen upon something that you want to go and take a closer look at, which is one of the huge benefits of exploring an area by bike, you're not worried about leaving your bike behind. So, so yeah, I think we covered the two types of security. We got into some ways to secure your bike and some strategies, the different contexts that you might use, and a little bit about pricing. So, does anybody have any questions? Oh, Apple AirTags. Yeah. I think that would be a great idea. I thought about that myself.
I think the issue there is you need to hide it, because it's pretty simple to just throw it away or have you fall around a trash truck.
Yeah, totally. So if you are going to do an Apple AirTag, I would probably put it in as primary of a component as you have. So Apple AirTags are just a geolocating device that run on a set of 2032 batteries. And the batteries usually last for over a year, and they are replaceable. Those kinds of things. I think those are some interesting ideas. If you're going to use that, you know, you wouldn't want to, like, you know, maybe you'd put it in the seat post, but maybe somebody would swap that out. I could see putting it inside of your stem. Or if you have a threaded headset, you could put it inside of your steer tube below it. Those are some places that would be unlikely to walk away with the bike, or walk away absent of the rest of the bike. Yeah, I think of it the same way you think about your primary security. You'd want to put it inside of the thing that's most expensive. So yeah, getting inside of the frame would be ideal.
Okay, Jamie, you're at a half hour, but I want to interject as we talk about the Apple tags. Don't go try to retrieve your stolen bike by yourself.
Yeah.
Call law enforcement. The guy who
Yeah.
stole your bike is a bad guy by definition. So he's not going to just kindly give it back because you say it's yours.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, we're going to talk about maintenance a little bit and then see about questions. I learned from my time at Freewheelin' that it's a good idea to show people how to flip their bike upside down. So there's a variety of ways. If you feel pretty sprightly, you can just grab just up from the hubs and lift it up like that. If you feel less sprightly, it's always fine to lay it down, and ideally you'd lay it down on the non-drive side. Same move, grab the hubs, and we're upside down. See if my framing was correct, so you guys can see. Yeah, I think so. So what I wanted to show you guys first is just how to notice with your senses what's going on with the bike and maybe where. So I've got some sacrificial Post-it notes so that they show up pretty well. And what I'm gonna do is I want you guys to notice a couple things. So if we pedal, we'll go forward, why not? There we go. You'll notice that everything's spinning. And if we look at the crank, every time we pedal, we get 1, 2, 1, 2. So if you get clicks like that, it's probably something having to do with this system here. So that might be your pedals, that might be your crank, chain rings, or your bottom bracket, which is the bearing system that allows it to spin. So if it's every other crank or every crank, then that's the first place to look. The difficult part of that is that's also the most amount of stress that you put into the bike. So if there's anything else on the bike that might be a little bit loose, that's integral to the frame and its stiffness, that pressure might cause that sound to happen. So noticing that it's every other pedal stroke helps us find where it might be or know what it might be related to. But don't be surprised if your mechanic hears you say, every time I pedal, I hear a clicking sound, and they start to look at your headset and they tighten your quick release on the back and check your stem bolts and that kind of stuff. So that's the first one to notice in terms of pace. So if we look at that same rate, so crank, 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 crank. If you watch this guy that's going on the wheel, it's going tick, 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 very, very fast. So on the other end of the spectrum, sorry, that's probably a little loud. If you hear something that's happening very, very fast, you're going to want to look to your wheels. There might be some issue with your wheels. So for example, if your wheel's out of true, you might see it hitting the brake pad. And then the confusing one, the one that fell off while I was doing that, is our chain. So our chain, as we pedal, so I'm going to pedal once, 2 times, 2.5 times. So that one can be confusing, and that's the one that you really need to pay attention to. So if you're hearing it every 2.5 or intermittently, it's a good idea to look at your chain. Sometimes there might be a link caught up or something like that. So those are some easy ways to start the diagnostics process for a strange sound, and you should pay attention to those sounds. Those are important. So one sense that we can use to evaluate what's going on the bike, and one of the most useful ones is our ears, and trying to brain our way through what that rate might point to can be really valuable information for you to provide for your mechanic or for you to solve yourself. So the next thing that I want to talk about a little bit, and now you guys get to go mobile. There we go. All right, are you guys seeing a red hub at this point?
Yeah, Jamie.
Yes. Okay, great. So I want to show you guys a couple, a couple wear components up close and personal. So if we come in here, this is my brake. So you guys can watch it actuate. To notice if it's adjusted well, I'm gonna look for a little gap that is even on both sides of that brake pad. And we're looking pretty good. That brake pad itself, almost all of them have little wear lines. So if you see this line, oops, sorry. There's a line that's going there. That looks like it's pretty hard to see for you guys. But if you look on your brake pad, you'll see a line. And once that pad gets probably
Can you throw
within a
your light in
millimeter or
there?
two.
Can you turn a light on your phone, Jamie?
Oh, you know what? Yes, I got a second one that I can. Great idea. How are we doing?
Much
Can
better.
you see that line right
Yep.
above the word cool with a K? So
Yep.
once that pad gets close to that, that means you're getting close to the metal backing that will quickly destroy your rim. It also means that your brakes will probably feel pretty loose if you haven't adjusted them, and it's time to replace those pads. Those grooves, oops, sorry. Those grooves, these areas here are to allow material to fall off of the rim. Something that can be nice to do every once in a while if you hear like a scraping noise is to, let's take a look. See if you can see that. That's even harder to see. But sometimes you'll see some grit in here and you can get that stuff out and preserve the life of your sidewall. So that's the brake pad wearing. If we look at the rim itself, there's a couple different wear indicators on them. Generally, they'll have this line, and you can compare that line to the rest of the rim. When that is gone or not noticeable, then it's time to replace your rim too, if you have that type of brake. This one does not have it, but some of them will have a small dot in the track, and that does the same thing as well. Moving on to the tire. So I have a pretty decent tire here. You know, we've got little tiny holes. It can be good to go through and inspect those carefully with something pokey. Oops, not quite focusing. But yeah, this one's in pretty good shape. Here we go. This one has a little tiny piece of something that I can remove, and I may have just saved myself a flat later. There we go. The other thing you'll want to look at is the sidewall. I've got a little bit, I'll get the light again there. I've got a little bit of roughing out there, but not bad. If you see creases in the sidewall or parts of the tire, or sorry, the tube maybe sticking through, then that's a good reason to replace the tire. The other thing that we can look at is this a nice round cross section, or does it have a buzz cut? If it's got a buzz cut that looks significant, so maybe a third of the tire, it would be good to think about replacing that tire. And then if you ever see a skid that gets all the way through the tread to the brown casing that's underneath, so you pulled your brakes really hard and you've got a skid through it, that can be pretty dangerous. You could get a blowout and lose control of the bike, you know, just because it's surprising. If you get a skid through it, that would be a good time to replace the tire. That's how we look at our tires. For the chain, I usually pedal backwards and I look for a skip in the derailleur. So this chain is doing pretty good. What it would look like would be you'd see the rear derailleur do a quick little chick like that as I was backpedaling. And that could mean that you've got a seized link somewhere. You can then feel the link carefully as you pedal, and you might be able to find it. You might be able to loosen it up or just lubricate it. That being said, this chain needs to be cleaned. So if I can not terrible, but there's definitely some dirt on it. It's a good idea to clean and lubricate your chain after you go through rough conditions. Or if you ride through the rain, it's good to dry it off, let it dry, and then relubricate it. In a pinch, you can just throw some lube on it. It's going to be better than just nothing, but ideally you clean it and then lubricate it. And, you know, I do that probably, I don't know, every week or so, if I'm being pretty good. And I ride daily. So if you don't ride frequently, just go ahead and wipe it down and then lubricate it every time you ride as the first, you know, as a way to say hello and I love you to your bike. So the other thing I want to talk about, so those are the major wear items. There's some minor wear items like my terrible looking bar tape, the hoods, but those are the major wear items. Other things to check are your bearings. The way that we do that is to grab the component that has bearings and try to rock it back and forth perpendicular to its travel. So normally a wheel's going like this. So I'm not going to rock like this. I'm going to rock to the left and the right. And if it's got any clicking or knocking, that's a good sign that you should have your bearings looked at or adjusted. So that's how we do it with a wheel. With the crank, I'll hold it right next to the crank arm so that I can leverage off of that. And I'll go in and out. That feels good. And with the crank, it might be good to check in a couple locations. So maybe do it on the other side too, and make sure that it feels pretty good. On the headset, with the bike upright, you can pull your front brake and then you can rock your bike forward and backwards. And in the interest of keeping this handheld, I'll show you that when I'm all done. So yeah. Other general maintenance, pull your seat post every once in a while and grease it. All right, so the last little section I wanted to talk about are some of my favorite tools of the trade. Just so you guys are familiar with the kind of things that are good to carry. So a set of multi-tools, I've got some bits out right now, but I like this one. It has a ratchet and then I can keep just the bits that I need for my bike, and I can customize those based on my needs. You know, you might decide that like a little Phillips head bit is enough. You might decide to carry a tiny screwdriver if your bike requires it. The other thing that is essential is a tire lever. This one's a Pedros one. The thing to remember is it's not a crowbar. You do kind of get it underneath a rim, but then you're going to slide to remove the tire. You're not going to try to keep, you know, pulling it off all the way. So modern tire levers are wide and flat like that to make it easy to slide like a spatula, not yank like a crowbar. Yeah, and 2 tire levers. So if you have 2 tire levers, that can allow you to get one at a time. And I think we do a flat clinic, so I'm not going to run through that, but you would get it under the rim, and then this little object allows the tension of the tire to hold it in place while you go and get the other one. So you guys can see, oops, there you go. You can see it locked in there. So I would get it over to the spoke, move it over, and then the tension would hold it in place until I get my other tire lever on there. And then my other tire lever would be the one that I would slide. Once it's inserted into the tire, I would slide it along the rim in order to remove that tire. So I really like these finish line bottles of lubricant for on the road. This is great for your chain, but I think it's also really good for problem solving. If you've got like a brake post that's seized up, like one side won't move, you might try lubricating that area where it moves in order to help that out. Patch kit, I really like these vulcanizing patch kits. They take a little bit longer, but they can be basically a permanent fix. And then I also like this green box because it's harder to lose. So that's really my only preference for these tip tops is the green box is like very satisfying to open and they're hard to lose. A pen is really nice to mark a tube so that you know where you're patching. And then this is probably my favorite tool in my toolbox. This is a Nipex adjustable plier. So you use a button to press it. The jaws stay incredibly parallel, and it has a small cam in it, this part here, that allows it to really lever down. So this one, even at its size, is powerful enough for me to remove the pedals off of my bike without like slipping out or stripping out or that kind of stuff. They just came out with a new one that is a little bit smaller and you can actually adjust with one hand. This one takes two hands. Unless you're like super clever. I can't quite do it.
Is that one made specifically for bikes?
There is a new one that was developed with bike mechanics, but it's not sold as a bike one. It's just like everybody uses it now because it's one hand, but it's about half this size. It's 100 millimeters. And it's great. So yeah, this one is my go-to one. I use it for all kinds of stuff. This also, like, it's so good that like you don't really need tweezers even. It grips hard enough to get like little tiny pieces of metal out of the tire. And because the jaws stay so parallel, you can actually even use it to, oops, where's my camera? There we go. You can use it to adjust a spoke in a pinch. So generally you would never do that with a crescent wrench because it would reliably wear out the square part of that nipple. But this one grabs so well and stays so parallel that you actually can use it reliably to true your wheel if you need to. But yeah, if not this, if you do have like nuts and bolts that have the type of faces that need this, either you should have like a box wrench style thing or a crescent wrench. And then it's also good to have tweezers to pull stuff out. Again, if you don't have this style, it'd be good to carry a spoke wrench, at least the size for your bike. This one's a multi one because I will repair other people's bikes. And then obviously there's like a wide variety of multi-tools for bikes. That link has a list of some that I think are noteworthy. So, but yeah. So that is, I'm going to turn the camera back around unless you guys have specific questions on stuff that you want to take a peek at. Oops. Hello. There we go.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Why, when you put that tool on one of the spokes to change the tire, why did you do that?
Oh, great question. So I would only do that if I had a second one of these and I was really struggling. So once it gets inserted into the tire in one area, I'm probably going to want both of my hands to install the second one. And so I can leave it in place. If I didn't do that, if I just kind of hoped that it stayed there, there's so much tension between the rim and the tire that as soon as I let go, this would just flip its way out like that. So it's just there to keep it in place while you use both your hands to install the second one. And then you can start to peel the tire off the rim that way. Good question.
Yep, but it's the one where you had it and it hooked onto the spoke. It was like a little hook. Is that, oh,
yeah.
that, okay, I must have missed that. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So on one end, we're engaging the tire, the rubber part that contacts the road. So we're using this section to peel that off. And then at the other end, that part is hooking into the spoke. and it's just staying there. This does nothing to like adjust spoke tension or anything like that. It's just there to hang on conveniently until we get our hands set for the other one.
Thanks.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and Damon shared the toolkit. So one of the things that I wanted to mention at the very bottom of that toolkit sheet, I remind you that you want to remove whatever caused the flat. It's a really good idea not to just, realize you have a flat, put a new tube in, and then hope that it's all going to be okay. The thing that caused the flat will probably still be in your tire, except in a couple situations like a pinch flat or something like that. So it's always important to find what caused the flat and remove it. At the very bottom of this sheet, I left, so this will be good for anybody that lives in Indy. There's a link to a website called Request Indy, and that is how you communicate issues about Indy's infrastructure to the people that are tasked with taking care of it. So the other thing, like if you got a flat because you're going through a bike lane that has a bunch of gravel and glass and debris in it, you can click on that link, and I put some directions on how to report, like how to navigate through to report that kind of thing. And this year we have upped our equipment for taking care of those types of problems. We also have more staff to take care of MAC requests. So the Mayor's Action Center request, which is what you'd be submitting through Request Indy, those now are taken care of as they come in.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. Every time you do one of these, I learn something else.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to get one of those tools, one of those wrenches. I'm just waiting on the price to go down.
Yeah, right. Bad time to be waiting for prices to go down.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I can give everybody 6 minutes back to their day. We will be doing this again next month, and give me just a second. I'll tell you what the topic's going to be.
Hey, while you're doing that, Damon, I do have a question.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah.
Jamie, how often do you bring all of these pieces of equipment with you on a ride? You bring it every time you ride, or do you have a case that you put it all in?
Oh, and I forgot to mention, yeah, I also, this is my favorite pump, which is the Toe Peak Mini Morph. I will show you what I take on every ride. I take these guys on every ride, basically. Sometimes I might swap my pump out for like a CO2 cartridge or a smaller pump. But I basically take those on every ride. I may skip that one. Like if I want to do super tiny and only have stuff in my pockets, I'll do those guys with a CO2 cartridge. But yeah, I mean, part of it is that I will stop to help somebody work on their bike, so I like to have a pretty complete kit. But yeah, I basically have those with me at all times. And to that point, you know, even if you don't know how to do everything on your bike, if you can supply the tools for the fittings that are on your bike, you know, people like me will stop and help you out.
That is absolutely true, Jamie.
Yeah. So, you know, we need the equipment and the knowledge. So if you bring the equipment and not the knowledge, or the other way around, you know, we're gonna have a pretty resilient biking community.
Right. That was one I was going to add. As long as you have the right parts, someone will come along who's likely going to be able to help you use those parts. And I want to echo Roy's comment. I agree with him. As cute as your little green patch kit is, I would much rather have a spare tube.
Sure. Yeah.
And I typically,
yeah, and I
take a
too.
tube and a patch kit. So I figure the first flat is easy to fix. The second flat gets a little harder. And with the third flat, I use my cell phone to call my wife to pick me up.
Yeah, I'd say at very minimum, it would be good for everybody to have a tube that fits their bike, a tire lever, and some supply of air, because that is the most common thing that leaves people stranded. The next thing up would be to have some sort of multi-tool that fits most of the stuff on your bike.
Yeah, great.
Question.
Good.
How do you feel about those tubes that don't have air in them? They're just rubber. You could stab them and put stuff in them, and they don't pop. They're just like a rubber tube.
They're very difficult to install, so I don't love that. But once they're installed, if you need just pure reliability, that's great. For me personally, like the benefits of a pneumatic tire far outweigh that reliability. Those tires are going to be quite a bit slower, like a quarter to a third, and I find them to be way less comfortable. So if you're doing short trips and not very often, I think that's a great idea. But if you're a daily rider, you're going to be served really well by having a set of pneumatic tires, and maybe instead investing in some extra flat protection, and then also the skills to replace a tube yourself.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that's going to wrap us up. Next month, our session will be on April 14th, and it will be talking about bicycling in the community. We're going to have representatives from some of the organizations that have regular scheduled rides to talk about how you can get involved with those. In May, we're going to talk about planning a bike travel weekend and doing an overnight. In June, we'll do family bike rides, and you can find all this information online, and we hope to see you again in a month. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.